Dave Brown back with Wes. We're in episode number 3.
Number 3.
We're kind of loosening up. Wes is not so scared anymore of the camera. So we've kind of got into pickleball big time, which we weren't going to. You being a professional pickleball player in the Hall of Fame, we talked about all that. Then we got into education. You were a 13-year teacher.
Yep.
And so I think we just covered. So we have one will be pretty much, Wes Gabrielson in pickleball, Wes Gabrielson in education. This one's going to be a little bit more, we're going to kind of move around some spots. So we're going to change directions on some of our questions. But starting off, one of the things that I've always been fascinated with, what you got to teach, you got this approved at McMinnville High School. It wasn't a normal class, but I'm a huge music guy. I've loved music my entire life, like a lot of different genres, but so do you.
Yes, I do.
So
not all of them, but most.
But this class you taught was fascinating, and there was more to it than just listening to the music. There was a what's that called? A method to your madness on this.
Of course, yeah. History of rock and roll.
Yeah.
So I got it approved, taught it. I want to say 1, 2, 7, 8, 9, 20. Taught it for 5 years, and so it was for juniors and seniors. They had to have 2 years of history to be in it, because we covered, it was pretty much 20th century and beyond. And so a lot of students came out of that class saying, I can't believe how much history I learned within the class, because we would weave in, all right, Vietnam's going on. So you've got outlaw country going on. You've got country that's responding in a negative way to the outlaw country. You've got protest music. You've got all these songs that people think, oh, these are just these songs. I'm like, oh, they were written in protest of the war.
No.
But anyways, it was a really fun class, and we started with the roots of rock. So we started with jazz and gospel and blues and country, and went all the way up through typically about the 80s. I didn't quite get into grunge. I wanted to, and hip hop not as much, but just all the offshoots of rock. So it was a really fun class.
How did the kids just it's like, dude, we're used to these just typical, thick book history classes, and then all of a sudden they're in music theory going through history, but using music as your vehicle.
Yeah, I think they liked it. The homework that I gave them homework every day. And the homework was typically listening to something. And so if we were covering, let's say, women in rock and roll, on Google Classroom, I'd have a post of, here are the 15 songs and videos of these famous women in rock, and not just rock, but R&B and jazz and all this. And then they'd come back in and we talk about it.
Right.
And so a lot of people would really appreciate being exposed to new genres, or they'd be like, oh yeah, that Van Halen song, my dad listens to that all the time. I never knew the name, and they, So anyways, it was fun because some kids were really into it already. Other kids, it took them a few days to get into it. Some kids really loved the Beatles. I would spend a month on the Beatles.
Okay. Have you seen the whole new, or has it even came out yet? But there was that big project where they're putting out taking all the tapes and everything and putting together,
splicing them together.
Yeah.
That weren't released.
Has that came out yet?
I think last year they put a song out that was some recordings. They put it together before. Yeah. I think so. I think one of them got nominated for a Grammy. It was like something that John sang on, and then Paul did the bass, and they got George's guitar part, and Ringo, of course.
Right.
Underrated drummer.
Yeah.
Very underrated.
Very underrated. I think that music, for really quick for me, Wes, I was 8 years old, 1965. It's my first year kind of going out to pick strawberries, black caps, and cucumbers. And I'm on my own. I got no sisters around. I'm 8 years old. Different era of the world, 1965.
Very different.
I got to get up at 4:30 in the morning. I got to catch the bus at 5:30, and so I get a clock radio. I had a little bit of money, so I get this clock radio for like $12, and this thing would pick up Kansas City Royals baseball games. Was it the Royals back then? It would pick up Dodger games and Giants games, and it was a good clock radio. So I'm listening to it one night, and I remember now, in 1965, I've got older sisters, and they are listening to a lot of music. So I'm around a lot of that mid-60s type pop music, 45s. And scratchy, but they're always having little sock hops in the neighbor's carport.
Sock
So
hops.
I'm listening to all this. That's what they were. And so I go get on my radio and I'm listening, to all the sock hop type music. And all of a sudden, here's the Beatles.
Uh-huh.
And I briefly saw them on the Ed Sullivan Show when I was like 6.
Which would have been 64.
67. And so I saw them, but Mom and Dad turned it right off. They were very, very...
Who are these long-haired boys singing from England?
So that I only saw it briefly, and so I'd heard of them, but then all of a sudden I turn on the clock radio and here's a Beatles song, and I'm like, oh no, that's music. And so I'm 8 years old, and I'm just sitting there listening to this, and so then I started to get more in tune with it, and so that's what was my first start right there.
Do you have? I mean, did you really get into the Beatles after that?
Yeah. Totally.
Do you have a favorite album?
I got 20 of them up here.
But like top 3 favorite Beatles songs, because I used to have on my Beatles end of the unit test, I'd have the kids come up with their perfect playlist. If no one's ever heard the Beatles before, I say come up with your 10 songs for someone to be introduced and tell me why.
Get Back's probably my favorite.
Love it. Trivia question.
Yeah.
And you probably know the answer. If not, don't mean to put you on the spot. There's a lot of people in history who have been considered the 5th Beatle. As in people who have recorded on stuff, been a part, the manager and all that. One of those people played the organ on Get Back. Very famous, and not one of the 4 Beatles, but was buddies with George.
Yeah.
Who was the organ player?
No, I know the gentleman you're talking about.
He had a couple of big hits on his own in the 70s.
Yeah, he played on a lot of their stuff.
Toward the end, on that on the Abbey Road or Let It Be album.
Tell me, because I'm
Billy Preston.
Yeah,
and he was only like 19 or 20.
And he did a version of My Sweet Lord, George Harrison song.
Yes, he did.
After George,
especially when he died. Yep, they were buddies.
It was classic.
Or mates, I should say. They were mates.
They're mates.
Might.
The Beatles to me are the best band over, but I think we've had this talk. You have to be careful though, because there's just so many great bands out there that have come throughout the years and stuff. And one of the things I would do in tennis is I always had music going, because kids are getting out of school at 3:00, they're brain dead, they're just tired of being around all these people telling them don't do this, don't do that. And so I would have the stereo cranked out in the tennis court, and the kids would get out there, and all of a sudden it was just kind of like loose and fun, and they're listening to her stuff. And so, but I incorporated right off the bat. I go, you got 5 seconds to name this song. And if they couldn't say the Beatles and Get Back, we were doing push-ups. And so the kids, I've kind of forced them into learning how to get this music down. Yeah. And, but we would move from different stuff. I took that same thing to Canby. Yeah. And the girls always wanted to listen to Beyonce. And I go,
Beyonce's talented.
Beyonce's really talented, but I said, I can do 4 Beyonce songs and I'm ready to move on.
Well, sure. There's a threshold.
Pretty much with everybody.
Sure.
Yeah.
So. Yes and no. We have our threshold.
Yeah.
On that.
Beatles are awesome.
But what I would do with that, which was super cool, is the kids got to see that the Beatles were really like chameleons, because over their career they changed so much their sound. But we would play a game once we got a couple albums into the Beatles, because we went chronologically, talked about their stylistic changes and weave that into the events going around in history. But the kids could listen and tell me, was Paul singing? Was John singing? Was George singing? Was Ringo?
Hear that, you guys. If you're out there, try to pick up on this, because I've done this for the last 3 years. I've been listening to the Beatles more than ever. And they were just so good at changing voices and gears.
Well, that's the other thing, is they
backups, and then who was doing the harmonies and stuff. It was like, man,
their inspiration. This could be all about the Beatles. Their inspiration for the harmonies, because the Beatles were known for having that 4-part harmony, was the Everly Brothers. They were obsessed. They were obsessed, and Buddy Holly, of course, and Little Richard, and Chuck Berry. But Get Back, Paul McCartney.
Yeah. And then the Rooftop that they played on.
Love that. I would show the video of that to my kids. Yeah. Oh yeah, and the police are coming in. Like, what's going on?
What's going on? And they looked like they were having fun that day.
Long hair and the trench coats. Like Ringo had this like colorful coat on, and he's just got the ring jamming.
And George had the green pants that day, I think. But then, I mean, George even smiled a few times. At first, you could tell he was like pulling.
He was the quiet Beatle.
He was like, because he was the most done at that point.
He's probably the most talented.
But I mean, he was
As
the
a
most
musician.
done, though. He was pretty.
Yeah.
He was ready to go.
I think they were all ready. I think Ringo was the one that was. He quit for a little bit and he came back, but. Yeah. I think there's the discussion what broke apart the Beatles. Everyone goes, it's Yoko Ono. I'm like, that's BS. There's other reasons.
Here's the fascinating thing about the Beatles, too, is you think about it. Like when they broke up, what we're talking, I mean, really.
69.
69.
Yeah.
So they're not very old at this point.
They were all under 30.
They're in their late 20s.
Yeah.
They're breaking up. But you think about it, like I go back sometimes and I look at what my kids went through and what I coach kids through, what I went through in my 20s. Yeah. And that's why I tell when you're 20 to 25, you're probably not going to be following your parents' lead on religion, politics, sports, music you listen to. You're going to start developing your own taste and stuff, how you decorate your house, so on and so on.
Sure.
And I think with what they went through and what they had to meet, I think Paul and John met
early on,
like 59, 60.
Before that.
So I mean,
I thought they were high school. Yeah.
I mean, they're 10, 12 years into a relationship.
Yeah, of course.
And then when you think about the 60s being the 60s, and I think what people don't give them enough credit for, and then whoever was running them, their manager was Brian
Epstein.
Mm-hmm. Golly, those guys were just. I mean, I look at the Beatles, Elvis.
Sure.
On the JV team, maybe Michael Jackson.
For what? Team for what?
Just how unbelievably popular they were in society.
Oh, I'd put him on the varsity with them easily.
I wouldn't.
It's like when John Lennon. So here's how I would say this. And I know there are different circumstances. For your generation.
I think you call me old, but go ahead. Lucy, do you hear that?
What would the Who say? People try to put me down talking about my generation. Yeah.
Roger. Come on, Roger.
Roger and Pete, because we fool around. There we go. Yeah. Another episode about that one. But when Lennon got shot and the shock and awe for people your generation who grew up with the Beatles, that was like, holy crap.
Yeah. For
my generation, when Michael Jackson, different circumstances, when he died, I think we felt the same type of shock because he was the equivalent. I'm not saying I'm a massive fan, but from a cultural standpoint, I can't think of anyone who was more culturally relevant around the world, not just in music, but pop culture, pop art, brand commercials than him for my generation.
Yeah, and you do have to go generation because people would go back to the 50s and say, hey, I mean, Elvis did start in the 50s, but if you go, pre-56, right in there, you've got...
The Ray Conniff singers. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, I'm
not saying like that for that.
We got Fats Domino, we got...
Well, that's the 50s, yeah.
We got, I still...
Jerry Lee Lewis.
I still, yeah.
The Killer.
I still think you have, when it comes to just... And I know you're going to love this when I come to switch into politics here, but for my lifetime, I was, a Republican delegate at Milwaukee when Trump.
Yes, you were. That's a great honor.
No, it was.
Awesome. I mean, it's amazing.
It was an experience I'll never forget for the rest of my life, and to have Judy be there with me.
Oh, for sure.
I can't tell you how many times you guys were 60 feet from the stage. Oregon was given their best seats ever.
Yeah.
We're looking right at the stage, whoever was speaking, and but I got Judy into the first bowl outside the lower bowl, and I look up, and I'm not even kidding. I'll repost some of these, and we want to put together like a montage for like a podcast. But if you know my wife Judy, she's wearing this bright yellow dress, blonde hair. She's beautiful, and she can dance. And so the music would be going or something like that. And then our Oregon delegates, we had Indiana in front of us. We had Samoa to our left. And I would just go, hey, everybody, look left. And we'd look up, and there's Judy. And she's like on a little platform. She's just dancing away. And everybody's just cracking up. And she'd see us all looking at her, and she'd dancing more.
Yeah.
But in my lifetime, and I'm not saying this because I do like Trump and Republican, but
sure.
I would say, and I put Michael Jackson, you might be right, especially from your generation. But when you talk about when somebody walks into a room and the electricity that's created,
sure.
The Beatles, Elvis was first, then the Beatles, and I hadn't seen it
Sure.
and felt it. But we're in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and when Trump would just come through the doors of the arena on the screen, he's not even in the main arena yet. Now I know we're talking about just Republicans here too, so everybody, of course, they're there for a specific reason.
Well, sure, but
you know, but let's throw Michael Jackson in there. Who else would be on the music list?
Well, if I go back to politics for a second, I think in my lifetime, and I was born in the 80s, I think of all the presidents and just public figures in politics, there's two people, and I'm not saying this because one's Republican, one's Democrat, but when there's an arena full of people, there have been two people that have walked, when they walk into a room, that the spark is created.
Yeah.
That's Trump and Obama.
Yeah.
I mean, for the revolutions that they each led, like, holy smokes. And I was going to say, going back to the education part, as a social studies teacher, I was starting my career, my first year of teaching was right after Obama, or was right that fall Obama got elected in 08. The amount of kids who are now interested and knew, even 12, 13-year-olds, that knew about politics, knew about Obama and McCain and all this stuff, the pop figure that he became, which you could argue Trump's in the same, I mean, they're pop stars. I mean, they were president, but so many kids were more in tuned on both sides of the aisle. Yeah. It didn't matter if they liked Obama or not, like really into it. And I thought that was such a good thing. And then fast forward 8 years, I had more freshman kids coming in caring and knowing about politics because Trump's election, and knowing about it because he was on the news all the time, like Obama was. Like, I really, as someone who's not on that side of the aisle, I really appreciated the amount of interest that was generated, and kids wanted to talk about stuff, and they were more interested than, we're talking about government. Okay. Before.
No, I get you.
So,
and then one thing I think Trump and Obama both have, they have ability to speak. They can
agree to disagree, but yes,
they get in front of the crowd and go.
Sure. And no. I think they can both speak. Correct. Maybe not at the same level of eloquence, but I think they both achieve captivating their audience through different means.
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah.
No, I think, yeah. And we're not even getting into like political views. No. I'm just saying, like, no, they're both very dynamic in different ways. Yeah, very dynamic.
And not trying to get out of this subject, but going back, like Michael Jackson was dynamic.
Oh,
that's what, like movie stars though, and stuff. Sure. When you look back at all the movie stars, I can't think in my mind any movie star or a television star that approached those levels.
No. Well, but there's also different layers. Like, you're the leader of the free world.
I mean, like we talking Michael, Elvis, the Beatles. Going back to the original thing with the Beatles is like they were like everywhere.
Sure.
And they were, photographed, videotaped at the time. Whoever was running with that, but I think they came along at a perfect storm when it comes to. You had Elvis, but then the difference between the Beatles and Elvis was the Beatles had 4. So if you didn't like John, you could like Paul. If you liked Paul, you could like George. If you didn't like George, you could go Ringo. And people did that. And they were coming in at that time where Elvis was very controversial with his hair, his style.
Hip waggle.
Sexual.
And they showed him from the waist up.
I mean, he hit that, but it was a different era in the 50s.
For a couple years. And then he went a little softer.
Mm-hmm. Bad advice.
Different record company made him more money.
Come out, man, and they are just like different than anything that ever been seen before. Here come the Beatles, and all of a sudden it's just like they explode. And then when you look at what the songs they came out with, I find it from a music standpoint. If I could go back in, by the way, anytime as a kid, 10 years old, I walk away from the piano. My mom's teaching me because it wasn't cool. I was playing sports. Yeah. Worst mistake ever made.
Okay.
Worst mistake ever made. I wish I could have got into music more and learned way more about it. I'm like trying to play the guitar now at this age. But the Beatles, they were so creative with such basic tools to work with at the time compared to today. And they didn't have computers like they do now to they did it all rough and raw. And
but we're pioneers. Changed. Yes. No, I think when you.
So what did your kids think about the Beatles and say 63.4 compared to 60.
Well, there were different eras. I mean, I always said the early years, which, I mean, I hate to say this, but if you're a massive Beatles fan, like, you think about current day, you look at like the 90s, the boy bands. They're the first boy band ever.
Yeah.
I mean, they were, because what were their main audience in 63, 64? Teenage girls.
Yeah.
Of course. My dad tells me in 64 he goes to see A Hard Day's Night in the theater. Couldn't hear a damn thing that was said because the girls were screaming in the theater. And so I used to show that video to my kids, and they're like, oh my God, this is crazy. Just hearing, swooning. And usually the men in the audience are like this.
Yeah.
But
wish I could be.
Yeah, I wish I could have been. Well, I wish I could have watched that live, been in the audience. But the early years, then I think you have the experimental years, the Rubber Soul, the Revolver, where they're dropping a little acid, they're smoking a little grass. Thank you, Bob Dylan, for introducing them to that. And then the end, they had the more classic rock era.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, I had kids who loved all of it. I had some kids who only liked one era and really didn't like the other. So, I mean, it was different.
Was the earlier or the later era more popular?
Well, the experimental phase was
the
most. I like it the most. Like Revolver, that album, I think is. Everyone says Rubber Soul is the game changer, which it kind of was. But I think Revolver is my favorite. There's some trippy stuff on there. And that's as someone who's a teetotaler myself when it comes to the drug department, but I can still enjoy it and embrace it.
Yeah, no, I get you. I think it's incredible, all the stuff they did do and try and all that kind of stuff that they came through intact, like a lot of bands did not.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of bands did not come through. The other day, you and I were talking. I was coming back from Bend, Oregon, you guys, and I was down there for business and seeing my son and his family. Grandkids, and you and I got talking a little bit, and we came up with the whole Jim Morrison and the Doors, and they did L.A. Woman, which has always been a classic song to me. Not everybody likes the Doors, but if you like the Doors, you love the Doors with Jim Morrison. Tell me what you think about that.
Just the Doors in general? Love them. I think anyone that sounds completely different. I mean, it's a lot of times you listen to a band and you kind of know it's them. I like, for instance, like Boston, a lot of great hits. Comes on the radio, you're like, that's Boston.
Yep.
Now, we could spend a whole hour on that story. Boston is really innovative and cool. A lot of people don't know about it, but people wouldn't necessarily, in the general public, say that, wow, they sound really unique, just like the Doors sound really unique. But I don't think anyone was doing what the Doors were doing, because you have someone who has no music background as the lead singer, who has stage fright, and boy, that changed over time. I mean, the first couple of concerts that they performed, he didn't face the audience.
Really?
No, he was too nervous. He'd look at the band the whole time.
Really?
And management's like, you got to turn around, buddy, and put on a show. I mean, he was a poetry student, right, at UCLA, and so you have these talented musicians behind him, and then he morphed into this freaking god of performance. I mean, I'd put him up there with a Freddie Mercury or really great front people, and just Robert Plant. I know you really dislike Led Zeppelin.
No, I don't. He just walked by a huge poster in my hallway.
But again, I think they sounded so different that I love the Doors. Yeah. They have a really dark, mysterious tone about their music and lyrics.
Woman, yeah. It's
but even good. Riders on the Storm and Bullfrog Blue. There's a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, I think it's amazing too when you go back to the Beatles and you listen to them talk now about who they like the Everly Brothers, but they were big fans of Elvis's, and they were big fans of
Buddy Holly,
and they developed a lot of their stuff out of which we all do. As a coach you do it, as a player you do it. I'm teaching my 7-year-old grandson Ben how to golf today. It's on my first golf lesson. I'll never teach anybody else except him until he gets to be 7.5. I'm turning him over to somebody else. But I said, Ben, turn around and look at this guy right next to you. He was 45, 48-year-old guy. Good golfer. Don't know who he was. We were playing down at, they're in Bend. They're at the.
You told me Rivers Edge. Rivers Edge, gotcha.
Ben gets on the mat, little 7-year-old, and he, he's got the hockey feet moving, and he's slapping like this, and all of a sudden we got the hands, and I put my hand back here. I said, just hit my hand with your glove. He brings it back, and And then he's still moving his feet a little bit. So I said, hey, turn around, look at this guy. Just watch him hit 3 balls. And this guy's oblivious. I mean, he's really focused in on his own golf game. And sweet swing, Ben watches him, turns around, puts his feet down, doesn't move his feet again, except he had a little bit of a turn with his right foot, like you do, if you're a more accomplished golfer. And I'm like, okay. And I think the same thing with like music. You watch and you're going, oh, yeah. Like I love Joe Cocker.
Oh, yeah. Didn't write a lot of his own stuff, but a great interpreter and a great voice.
Yeah, just and unique. That's Joe Cocker.
Yeah.
You're coming out of the chute.
Yes.
Okay,
and finally,
I
think he's passed away maybe 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Finally got nominated for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame this year. He'll walk right in. Because all the inductees will vote for him.
Yeah.
But, like, come on. People look at that, they're like, Joe Cocker's not in there?
Yeah.
That's like, he's at Woodstock, for God's sake. That's crazy.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you got to see him in Hollywood Bowl singing Little Help from My Friends. YouTube that one. That one.
And what was the big hit from the 70s? You Are So Beautiful?
Yeah.
Written by Billy Preston.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Comes full circle on this episode of Stand Tall.
Google Billy Preston. I mean, if you talk about influential artists out there, loved by the Beatles, by the way. So another flip off into the Beatles. If you go into the Traveling Wilburys, what do you think of them?
Love them.
Look it up, you guys. George Harrison would be a huge name in any band, right? He'd be like the lead guy. But pause for a second, because we got Roy Orbison, who they all idolize, by the way. Oh. Tom Petty, Bob Dylan, and Jeff Lynne.
Jeff Lynne from ELO.
ELO.
Yeah.
I mean, and they were in a house. I think it was Jeff Lynne's house in L.A. And they put together one album, and their first album, and then Roy Orbison passed away.
So then they did
another one.
Or maybe during the second one, the recording, he died. Because remember that music video when they get to the one part of that song in the music video, and they have the rocking chair. Because he wasn't there. He wasn't there to film. Yeah. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
He wasn't there to film, but the music had been recorded.
Man.
And I can't remember what the first names were. They gave each of them like their pseudonym of. Someone Wilbury, somewhere Will, but I don't care about that.
Look them up, you guys. The Traveling Wilburys, Wilburys, and you'll get. They came together like in the 90s,
late 80s,
90s.
I think it was.
And
late 80s,
they all sing leads on it, so it's really weird to go from George Harrison to Tom Petty. Tom got a little bit of airtime though. He's on that mic quite a bit.
Well, he was probably the biggest rock star of the time out of that group. Yeah. Love Tom Petty. Got to see him.
They're all gone now except Jeff Lynne.
Bob Dylan's still alive.
Bob Dylan's still alive.
Bob Dylan is no, but I will. Bob Dylan is coming this summer to Vancouver. To whatever we call it, Air Mattress, whatever. They have 8 names for the damn theater, in Clark County. He and Willie Nelson.
Really?
Uh-huh.
They got enough weed to get him here? Jeez, weed. Those guys.
Willie's not.
We to get that Titanic up to the top.
You've said that a few times. Willie's got to be 93, and Bob's 80.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And then I heard, because I went to, we talked about this too a couple weeks ago. I went and saw Hart play.
Yeah, you did.
That was a great show.
I saw him.
Fantastic. You would say.
I saw Hart live at Gil Coliseum. I told you the other day.
78, right?
78.
Yeah. And some people,
without a doubt, in my opinion, and there's a couple of, but as a band, best female band ever.
They're not all female band, but you're saying like lead, like, how much time we got? You're saying like female singer or female led band?
Female led band.
Because it could be kind of both. Because you could have.
They were so good.
No, they still are really good.
And volume of stuff they put out. I mean, man.
Yeah, but there's other people that.
Oh, sure. Pat Benatar was
even better. But I like Pat.
Yeah. Who else you got? Just throw a few more out.
Well, like if we're going way back, this might be obscure. Like the Runaways with Joan Jett. That was an all-female band. Or like the Go-Go's. Again, I'm not there to sound a little different, but I'm thinking like all-female. If we're going female singers, I think there's Ann Wilson in rock history. Fantastic. What about Jefferson Airplane? They're led by a female singer. Grace Slick.
Yeah.
What about Tina Turner?
Oh gosh, I forgot about. You know what my favorite female voice of all time is?
Celine Dion.
No, she's good. But
Great.
Janis Joplin.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's a raspy voice. Man, oh man.
Yeah, but yeah,
smoked a lot of Camels.
You know who we saw. I took my mom to this concert last year. Bonnie Raitt. That's a voice. Wow.
I got her album up here.
She sounds amazing. Great guitar player.
Yeah.
75, 76?
Sounded great. I just saw a video of her online. She's tough.
Oh, she's great voice.
Yeah.
You know, the guys in Crosby, Stills, and Nash, I'm taking Young out, they all said once, they're like, my favorite singer of all time is Bonnie Raitt.
Really?
No. There's a lot of good. But I think Hart is probably for the PNW, because they're from Seattle, probably the most recognized female-led rock band.
Okay.
In this part of the country, for sure.
I mean, that's what's fun about music as you go through the years and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
If you could transplant people from one era to another, their voices would carry on into it. And Judy and I have been to the Grand Ole Opry twice. We've gone to Nashville a couple times, down to all the honky tonks, and I highly recommend that. Yep. Whether you like country or not, the music experience down there, you get a lot of pop, rock, country that's more rock and roll, bluesy, hillbilly, type music. Aretha Franklin. We're going down to individual singers though. Aretha Franklin. In
the rock era, including R&B and all this stuff, best female singer.
I mean, she's Louise.
My favorite. I shouldn't say best because music's subjective, but
yeah, but she's wow.
Oh yeah, and amazing piano player. We talk about another couple really talented, amazing female rock era singers. About Carole King. Tapestry was. You talk about iconic albums.
Yeah.
Everyone known freaking. I saw this, or there was this. CNN did this series on the decades. It's really well done, where they had, 10 episodes about one decade. I used to use that for my classes. There's one about music, one about Vietnam, one about, all sorts of stuff. And the one about music I would show to my rock and roll class. And there's a great clip of Tom Hanks talking about going to church with his family. And I think he was the youngest sibling. And all his older sisters afterwards, they'd go get lunch after church. And for like 2 years straight, the only thing playing in the car was Tapestry.
Really?
Yep. Huh. It was on because it was massive.
Yeah.
It was massive. So you got to put her up there.
Yeah.
But I think going back to your original topic of iconic, like pop star phenomenon, the only other person I think my generation that I would put up there with Michael Jackson that crossed over not just the music world, but was everywhere for a while was probably Madonna. Was massive.
Yeah.
In a pop culture standpoint.
Yeah.
From a pop culture standpoint. In the 80s and 90s. I think those two were probably the biggest superstars worldwide in music of any genre.
Right.
At least English speaking.
Yeah.
Countries. Because there's a lot of good bands that are not English speaking that are massive that people don't know about.
No. When we get out and travel around, we try to see live music wherever we go.
Yeah.
One of the best open live concerts we've ever seen was in we're coming across you might have to help me here for a second. We're coming across the south. Where were we at? Country town. I'll get the name of it in a second. We ended up staying a couple of days. We were just tired from our 49-day trip. We're like 40 days into this trip.
Yep.
And I'll think of the name of this town in a second. But wow, where were we at? And I don't think it was Texas. Amarillo? No. Anyway, we pull in this town, and so we go down and we hear this guy, and he's the lead singer and guitar, and he's got another guy on harmonica. Yep. And it's in an old music theater, and it's a place where you can go up and pour your beers, like by the ounce, and you pay for it that way.
Tapper room, yeah.
And so we're in there for like an hour, and Judy kind of wanted to go, and it's kind of quiet, but it's really talented, guy. So we listened to it. I said, no, a little longer. So fine, I knew Jude wanted to go. So we go downtown. It's a Saturday night, and we get in the middle of this big town square park, and it's got artificial turf with concrete little things, so it's all naturally set up like an amphitheater. these country boys are up there, wranglered up, cowboy hat up, and they are putting on a show.
Love it.
And so Judy and I go out, nobody's dancing. So we go out and we start dancing. And next thing you know, other people start getting up and dancing. Well, at the very end of the concert, we're back in our seats and we're sitting down and all of a sudden I knew what they were going to do. And I mean, wranglered up, cowboy hats. I mean, they look like cowboys and they've been playing a lot of pop country type stuff.
Sure.
All of a sudden they all walk out. So you got lead guitar, bass, another guitar, you got the electric violin, and you got your drum. They all walk out, and this is what they did. They come out and they take their guitar like this, and they all point it to the ground, and they're looking straight down at it, and they don't say a word. You know where I'm going with this?
Nope.
So they all look down at the ground, all four in perfect unison. Now we're talking about a country western group, and we're in a country town. What's the name of that town? And so all of a sudden, the lead singer, good-looking young guy, probably 25, looks up at everybody and goes, "Y'all ever hear a Metallica?"
Oh, love it.
And they just blow the doors off of this. What town was this? I can't get it.
So they played some Metallica?
Oh,
I love it.
It was just
that's
phenomenal.
That's cool stuff.
Phenomenal. And the place just goes, I mean, we had people our age to younger people, and everybody's just like going nuts. And that's how they closed the show.
That's great. When I saw Heart, and again, I love it when artists cover other. When we saw Heart, you know, they have got a good relationship with. I mean, Nancy Wilson, guitar player, was friends with Van Halen because she's a really good guitar player, and you know, Van Halen gave her like a acoustic guitar, and so she played a song that she wrote for Van Halen because he died a couple years ago. But you know, a lot of those artists cover each other's stuff. They played two Zeppelin songs. It was great. So good. So freaking good.
Yeah. I remember the first time as a high school kid, and then coming into my into the 80s, you know, coming into that area of life, I got to admit, I wasn't a huge Eagles fan. I just didn't like really jump all over that. And I remember I was about 35, 30, maybe 40. And we're helping these people at the beach do this big project. And a friend of ours goes, "Hey, you got to watch this." So we go and hit a little music room, something in this little garage. And he built platforms. So we had couch. It was pretty cool how he did it, right?
Yeah.
Well, all of a sudden, he puts on Where Hell Freezes Over by the Eagles.
Oh, from '94, the acoustic thing.
We had our food. We're sitting there eating this thing. And it's from Australia, Melbourne. Not Arthur Ashe, Rod Laver Stadium. Acoustics, they made it for music too. Oh my gosh, we sat there and I was just mesmerized.
That brought a lot of people into the Beatles, or excuse me, the Eagles. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, their harmonies and their just musicianship was.
My favorite song of theirs was what they did to open every live show back in the day, Seven Bridges Road, and it was just them singing together. Oh, so good. But they're the reason why they're around.
Casper, Wyoming.
It's a little different than Amarillo,
Hold
Texas.
on, just thought of it. Casper, Wyoming's a town.
Fantastic place.
That's a cowboy town. Dude,
love it.
I mean, if you're not driving for world, sorry to interrupt you.
No, you're good.
Casper,
Wyoming. I like it.
Fun place.
You know the reason why the Eagles became a band? They were Linda Ronstadt's backing band, and she said, she said, "You need to go do your own thing. You guys are too talented to back me up."
Wow.
Yeah, that lady, my favorite rock female singer.
Who?
Linda Ronstadt, by far.
Really?
Oh, there aren't a lot of people when I hear them sing where I stop. She's one, because she does everything. She did. I mean, back in the day, she was in you call it the hippie era, the counterculture. Was it Beat of a Different Drum, the Stone Ponies, and then she went into all the country rock, and then she did frickin' Broadway, and then her family's from Mexico, has Mexican heritage, so she did all this authentic traditional Mexican music. What a voice.
So you probably remember, I've got her up there at one of my album collections. I got about 300 albums up there. And it's Linda Ronstadt with the roller blades, or the roller skates.
Sure it wasn't Jane Fonda? No,
wearing a Dodger blue, short shorts. Iconic cover of an album.
Yeah.
I missed out about, you guys, when you grew up in the, I would say late 60s, the 70s and 80s, though, when I was, a young person, you'd go into I'm trying to think of all the different places, and it was just nothing but albums and the album covers. So my oh gosh, my roommate, this has been my second roommate named Mike Lynch, and we have an apartment in Tigard, Oregon.
Okay.
We got no money, so we went and spent $25 on some used furniture. We got a couch and a love seat, green, terrible looking stuff, but it was clean. And so we had a little table, and so we're sitting there one day and we go, nothing on the walls. And Mike had like 600 albums. I had like 300 albums. And you start to look at these albums, and there's just phenomenal artwork on these things.
Oh, yeah.
I said, Mike, I got an idea. I said, you got $10? And he goes, yeah. So I got 10. I said, Saturday, we're going to the lumberyard. So we went and got molding.
Okay.
Came back, and from floor to ceiling in our entire apartment, except for the kitchen and the bathroom, we put this molding, about 15 inches apart, floor to ceiling.
Okay. And
then it was lipped out, so you could put your albums on there. People would walk in.
I love it.
And just stare for the first hour. They would just sit there and stare. They'd go up and down. It was like being in one of the big, I'm trying to think of the name of some of those album stores back then. And that's what we were trying to duplicate.
Yeah.
And the album covers were phenomenal, I mean, it's just like amazing artwork after amazing artwork.
Without a doubt. I still have a record player at home. Yeah. And I'll go to Goodwill. I'll go to a record store. We're in Portland a couple months ago. I'll buy a couple new ones. I know I can get it on Spotify. I've got Spotify Premium, but there's something about...
So you have that Linda Ronstadt album I'm talking about?
Yeah. There's something about vinyl.
Yeah.
And listening to it and hearing the little crackle at the beginning. It's just like we talked about in the last hour with reading. Like, I can sit and I read the news on my phone.
Yeah.
But there's nothing better than reading, like having that tangible book in your hand.
Yeah.
And reading it. Same thing for me with vinyl.
Yeah.
And so I listen to a different album every week. That's my goal. If I ask you a last music question, favorite album of all time, if you had to pick one to listen to on repeat the rest of your life.
Oh, I couldn't do that. But
if you had to pick one.
Whoa, dude.
I know it's a tough question. He's speechless.
Man. I mean, I'd have to get into something. Boy, that's a tough one. Because sometimes I just want to just rock out. Another time I just want to be mellow. One of the songs, my go-to songs when I'm just out doing something outside and I just want to mellow out. I don't want to have a lot of just, loud sounds. I listen to Bob Dylan, playing, what's his famous song?
There's a lot of them.
The real famous one.
Well, there's a ton, but Blowing in the Wind?
No. Not Lady. What's that one?
Knocking on Heaven's Door?
Knocking on Heaven's Door.
Oh, that's a great one.
But there's the long version. There's a 15-minute version.
Sure.
I'll play that one.
Yeah.
I'll go out in the hot tub sometimes. I just get in the hot tub. I just put that on for 15 minutes. Yeah. And I mean, you can go from 60 to 0 and just lay there and just listen to Bob Dylan sing that song. It's a lot of repeat stuff, but it's so good. I don't know. I'd probably somewhere in the Beatles because I'd want to get one of their more up and down albums because they.
You like the later stuff more, like the Abbey Road, Let It Be albums.
Probably Let It Be. I guess if I had to pick one, Let It Be. A little slow. Get a few fast ones in there.
Yeah.
I need a change up. I can't. Like if it's country, I really like Luke Combs. I like a little bit of Eric Church sometimes. I like. Different people more than others, there's so much talent out there. I've become a little bit more of a George Strait fan.
Sure. I listened to no country music after Garth Brooks. Nothing. I never was a big fan. The early stuff I like, and I always think he just took country to a whole new level and made it popular again to the masses. But then it got us a lot of pop country. And they're talented, but it's not my style. So I always call him the beginning and the end of country for me. No, I mean, that guy was probably, for a couple of years,
he was huge.
The biggest selling concert in the world.
Yeah.
By far. The guy could put on a show.
Yeah. What's crazy about Garth Brooks, though? Mama's in the Graveyard, Papa's in the Pen. That song, right? Great song. How he sings that so fast. I mean, how many takes did they have to do before he got that down?
Probably one.
But maybe.
Yeah.
But I grew up with alcoholic parents,
Mm.
and my parents were mean drunks. So Friday night, Saturday night, oh boy, stuff was flying. And when I first heard him sing that song, what year did that come out?
Is that Ain't Going Down Till the Sun Comes Up? That song? I'm getting between 93 and 95, probably.
Okay, so I'm like...
I could be off on the years.
I'm 35. I hear that song. It sends chills.
Yeah.
Because I stayed home so many times to make sure my 5'3" mom and my 6', almost 4" dad, who my dad was 215 pounds, could grab a Formica table and flick it 10 feet into a wall. And what my mom would just antagonize him. And so I would, not that my dad couldn't just flick me away too, but I would just hold my dad back. And so when I heard Mama's in the Graveyard, I thought about this specifically. Papa's in the Pen. I mean, I had 1,000 nightmares after that song.
Yeah.
And then after a while, it went away, and I'm like, okay, gotta let this go, Dave. But I think music does trigger stuff like,
oh, for sure.
You know, I've got to think all those Vietnam vets and hearing, you know, CCR, you know, some of the stuff they were doing back then.
Sure.
They were part of that.
Which some of their stuff was, well, and a lot of people thought Dylan wrote a lot of protest music, but he really didn't. He was just like,
Yeah.
You know, I remember my dad telling me that he was obsessed with Dylan. So he and his brother would get home. Here's the new Dylan record. They're in college. They're writing the lyrics down. Like, what does he mean about this? What does he mean about this? And then years later, there was some interview with him, and this is going to be a bad Dylan impression, but he was like, yeah, I just made stuff up. I'm sure there was some meaning behind some of it, but all of the, you know, the analogies and such there were, but some of it's just BS.
well, like when the Beatles were crossing Abbey Road, Paul didn't want to wear shoes.
Oh, we did the whole Paul is dead theory. And,
you know.
Hi, Judy Brown.
Judy Brown, you are on a live podcast right now with Wes Gabrielson. So you want to say hi to everybody?
I'm live from Oregon.
Where are you at in Oregon?
I'm at the Woodburn Outlet.
Are you on break or are you...
I'm on my lunch.
My wife, can I tell everybody where you work or no?
No.
Oh, I can't. I cannot say where she works.
Yeah.
It's in the intelligence community, Central Oregon. She's in charge of making sure people are behaving themselves.
There we go.
So we're right in the middle of this. So are you having a good day there, Brown?
I'm having a great day. I apologize. Keep talking.
I've been bragging about how beautiful you are at the RNC in your yellow dress.
Oh, you're funny.
So
I'm glad you still like me.
I do.
Okay.
Well, say goodbye to Wes.
How are you?
I'm great. I hope you have fun.
We're having fun. This is hour 3.
No, we're in
Hour 3.
We're in hour 3.
Yeah, we haven't gotten to a fight yet.
No. Love you, babe.
I love you. Talk to you soon, you two.
Bye. I will say that of all the people that I've ever coached against, you'd be number 1 in her book.
Oh, well, that's nice. I pay you to say that.
Yeah. $20.
My favorite album?
Yeah.
If I'm at the gym, if I'm road tripping, if I'm having a glass of wine at home, if I'm hanging with friends, I can put it on and I feel like everyone can listen to it, chill, appreciate it. Steely Dan, Asia.
Not bad stuff right there.
Yep.
That's why you have to, like, back to your music theory, these kids. I really appreciate what you did because those kids will never probably have anybody else ever do that to them again. But giving them the name Steely Dan, the Beatles and Elvis and Led Zeppelin and Heart, those are all pretty easy. Michael Jackson, I mean, everybody's heard of them.
Heart is obscure
Steely
for them.
Dan, though, I mean, a lot of people just don't understand how good they were.
But the parents of the kids know them.
Well, this is where if you're a good parent, you should be teaching your kids this stuff.
I got to see them a couple years ago. Well, one of the two guys has passed away, but it was a great show.
Really?
Oh yeah, I splurged for that one. I'm like, that's my favorite band ever. 4th row, Moda Center.
How much were those tickets?
No comment. It was amazing.
$400.
I don't remember, but it was worth it.
He's so tight.
It was worth it. But it was good.
Really?
Music's great.
Well, that was a long thing. I mean, I knew we were gonna get passionate
Yeah,
about the
for
whole
sure,
music thing.
music.
Moving on into the next stages of like, once you're post out of high school, there is that pressure. And one thing I really appreciate about you, Wes, and this a message to all educators out there: the fact that kids did not know your political
View.
makeup,
Yep.
and that's gone away now. And there's a lot of activists out there, and it's got to.
Yeah.
I think that from a classroom standpoint, I had educators the same way you were, and I always appreciated that because I didn't know. And then maybe when you get older and you see them, after high school sometime, and you see them in a debate, you're going, "Oh, okay." But I think keeping that clean is better than what we've done. Is we've brought that into the classroom. So, what do you think about the educators that have brought that?
This is maybe where we agree to disagree. I think the percentage of educators that are maybe in that category is far less than what people think. Okay. Because I mean, and I'm not being naive. Like, I know my high school was a small sample size, right? But like, I think I heard of one parent that one time wanted to talk to this teacher about a comment they made that was maybe political in nature. No. In the 13 years in MSD. Never heard it. I think the percentage is a lot lower than maybe is said. I think that, again, if people are using their classroom as a platform to share their message and wanting to take it bigger, it's not the right place. But I think that there are a few examples which I'm not saying that they're right, but they sensationalize the whole topic. It's like, you've got, and I'm not saying this is your view, but like, there's a lot of activist teachers. I'm like, well, give me the data. Like, how many incidents? It's kind of like, now we're going to get into politics. It's kind of like, I know something you and I probably disagree with, vote by mail, because I know you've talked about this on your podcast. Yeah. Like, we've had it in Oregon since late 90s? Is it late 90s? And like, I remember in the 2020 election having friends send me stuff about, is it going to be accurate, whatever. And I remember specifically looking up, because I had kids ask me, in Oregon, ever since we've had vote by mail, there was a nonpartisan, independent, third-party collection agency that analyzed the data. And individual ballots, and again, this is one source, I understand that, I take it with a grain of salt. In 25 years of vote by mail, and this is not just presidential election, it's state, it's local, individual cases, like individual ballots where there was voter fraud, take a guess, how many do you think? 25 years worth of all the ballots put together. That's a lot of ballots.
Yeah, no, I think.
What would you guess? How many? Because it happens. There's no doubt.
I would. The trust factor is on who's putting together the data.
Sure. It was a reputable, I don't want to say bipartisan, it's a nonpartisan source, but it was oversight by both parties had people that looked at it to get working together.
1,000.
7.
See, now I don't believe that at all.
Well, I was a little surprised by it.
I just think that it's like, yeah, I mean, I just think.
I know. This isn't really a political issue. It's more of an issue of the system.
So next time,
sure,
let's dive back into this, because this would be a fun one to talk about.
Sure,
it'll take a while. Met people all over the country who have been involved in the voter fraud.
Yep.
That's happened, and some of the stuff that's really gone down. And I think, to me, it's just the reason I would like to see us go back to in-person voting, except for people that have a high need of somebody to bring them a ballot that you could bring in. It would be expensive to verify it, but there are certain people that would definitely be helped to be able to fill
Sure.
it out at home, and or in a home or something, and get it in.
Sure.
But there's so much crap going on right now, I feel, and I've sit down and watched a lot of the stuff, listened to a lot of stuff, and there's just going to be more and more stuff come out about
Sure.
our system. My problem, like when you and I talked about abortion.
Okay.
Remember one day we were playing golf at Cross Creek?
I don't remember, somewhere.
But I mean, we were going to talk about abortion, and I said, okay, I'll talk about abortion when we talk about not getting pregnant. And so we had this all-day conversation about this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to this thing, I think what's going to happen is more important than that is like right now, I think in society in general, left or right, Republican or Democrat, independents or whatever, the very fact that the integrity of people is pretty low when it comes to general population. We have too many people out there just saying,
integrity about what though?
well, just like when it comes to
Because I
integrity,
may disagree
like
with you.
what's honest and what's truthful and what's lawful and what's not lawful. So for an example, these people yesterday or the day before like that were all caught in what town in California, and I think they were in, I want to say, I don't know what town it was.
Whatever, yeah.
They killed a bunch of Teslas, and so they got them on film. They got
destruction
them on all this
of property.
Kind of stuff,
They should be charged.
They're going to get charged big time. You go back to the city of Portland, and I'd have kids go down there. I had people, that were down there all the time, and they go, you just have a truck pull up, and they go, here, we'll give you $20 if you throw a brick through a window.
Then don't take the $20 and throw the brick through the window.
No, that's what I mean, though. It's like we've got this. A lot of kids just took $20 and just threw it on the ground and walked away. But the whole thing about, I think in our country right now, just the lawfare that I've gone through. You've had. Yeah. And so it's real personal. You have to start writing checks out of your own check.
You've learned about the court system a lot.
Yeah, and
the legal process.
And the legal process and lawyers, and I just think overall as a society, the thing that's made the United States different and a little bit healthier is we've had a country of laws. Sure. So we have to go back and look at and say, okay, this law is in place. Like, for an example, if somebody gets a DUI, my opinion is, okay, this is a very serious offense. They could have killed somebody, hurt somebody.
Sure.
A lot of times they do.
Okay.
Most of the time they probably get away with it totally and know you're gonna get pulled over. If let's just say, for example, you and I both got a DUI, and I call you up and say, hey, Wes, let's go play golf Saturday. And you go, yeah, I really can't because I got this 250 hours community service I got to pay back to the county state. For me, I'm not throwing you in jail.
Okay.
I'm like that first night, maybe until somebody comes to make sure you're sober, whatever. But then after that, you're gonna go to court and you're gonna pay a fine of what, $3,000, and you pay your fine, you make payments on it, whatever. But then also, I'm gonna look at you and say, I'm not putting you in jail over this, but I want you to learn a really valuable lesson. 250 hours community service every Saturday from 8 to 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. You can pick 4 Saturdays that you don't want to work throughout the year for a family reunion or whatever like that, and off you go. So then I get one. So we're both show up Saturday in Mac or Newburgh, and we're, I'm not putting an orange vest on us. I'm not doing anything to that. Yeah. But we're going to go out and give back in some way, shape, or form to the community. At the end of that year, I'll bet you our conversations would go something like, I like to have beer. I don't mind a whiskey. I don't mind doing this. Well, I ain't doing that again because I really miss my golf on Saturdays. I miss fishing on Saturdays. I miss my family on Saturdays. I didn't get to go to any of the track meets or whatever, soccer games. We'd have probably a different, if we had to suffer that consequence. And then our other friends who didn't get caught with the DIA are looking at you and me going, man, I really miss golfing with Wes and Dave. I ain't doing that because I don't want to be that guy going out and having to, do the community service thing. So that's how I look at crime and stuff like that. I'd have a lot more community service for a lot of those infractions, but we have to get our country back to knowing that right and wrong, and you just keep voting people in there are going to get the laws backed up.
Well, I agree. I think that, again, the integrity level is higher than we think. Most people, right? I think have good integrity, but it's about decision making. And I think we've got a framework of laws that work. I think the punishments need to fit the crime, which is what you're saying, make them more appropriate. And we need to have some systematic changes within the structure. I wouldn't necessarily say some of those structures should be torn apart and redone. Some might need to, but we just need to focus a little more on certain areas. But going back to like the voting piece, I think the whole reason why the vote by mail was instituted is it makes it easier for people to vote because voter turnout went down, and legitimate voter turnout increasing is what we want, right? So within that system, find a way to have better counting, better verification, and maybe you have a cutoff date for the mail-in ballots to be submitted, and then there's a couple days before the official election results are given. Because I think, I don't think it's necessarily just people that are elderly and not able to go to the voting polls, but you've got someone who's a single mother and they're working 3 jobs and they can't get off work, but they want to vote. They should be able to vote. And I think that's why mail-in voting was created, so it made it easier to vote. If people don't want, especially during the pandemic, people don't feel safe going into a group full of people if they have pre-existing health conditions, should be able to vote at home, I think. Because
those same people will walk into a McDonald's and eat food. They'll walk into Costco and buy groceries. They'll go
not necessarily.
They'll go to a restaurant.
Yeah, but I think it's. I think there's been discussion of like national holiday, make it a national holiday to vote, but then that's gonna. Certain systems are gonna be in chaos then, because you're gonna have people who aren't working in certain areas to fill the needs that we want. It was interesting when I went to Australia. People were asking me about voting and, what do you think about Trump and Biden and all this stuff? And I said, what happens if you don't vote in Australia? They say they fine you. I go, what? They go, they fine you.
Really?
So it's mandatory. It's compulsory. If you don't vote, they will fine you. If they find out that you didn't.
Oh, the ACLU gonna like that one.
Well, the ACLU doesn't exist in Australia, so
there you go.
I think the ACLU does a lot of good things, but I think every system every organization could improve. That's my Switzerland answer. No, I mean, seriously, and that's why, this is great. We've wanted to do this forever. It takes us getting in front of a camera to finally have the conversation, but we can sit and agree to disagree and still get along.
In our situation, though, we won at the circuit court. We
for
won.
Your the school board stuff?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so then it's a done deal. And we weren't even asking for these people. All we said is get this thing done, lawyer.
Sure.
No damages.
But
the ACLU gets involved, though. They spend a boatload of money, put everything they got at it. It goes to the Oregon Court of Appeals. Yeah. And we won 3 out of the 4 cases originally. Sure. And then it goes to all that one. But they uphold the ACLU, who have 4 highfalutin attorneys over here. We got 1.
Sure.
And somebody just out of Willamette Law School, and they got, and they pumped tons of money into this thing. That's I think at one time the ACLU was a better organization than it is now.
Sure, every organization could improve. But their whole mission is set up to. I'm not taking sides in the case, but their whole issue, the whole reason why they exist is to be involved in issues like that. And that's why they have a bunch of money for it. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying that's
in the court system too. I'm just telling you, sitting there and being part of all those things. Man.
No, I know. I mean, you got firsthand experience.
Lack of truth is prevalent.
Well, and it's interesting. It kind of goes back to the education piece. Like when I was teaching, I think we started this part of the conversation based on you saying you appreciated I never shared my views with my kids. I'd have kids ask me, because we would do a political spectrum test. And it's your opinion on this scale shows you if you're liberal, moderate, conservative.
Yeah.
And they would say, well, what's your view? And I said, well, come back and when you graduate, you can come back and I'll tell you. Because I know they would never do it.
Yeah.
And I never would tell them anyways. But in my mind, I always said to kids, the cool thing about political discussion, we shouldn't shy away from it.
Right.
But the cool thing about your opinion is always right if you're doing these 2 things. I said, you're backing up your opinion with concrete fact. And you're not being disrespectful, discriminatory based on how people react to your views and whatever. And so my whole thing was, it's we talk about a certain issue. I'd define it. All right, vouchers for schools or abortion rights as here's what the issue is. And then in table groups, I'd have the kids compile a list of arguments for both sides. I said, you don't have to agree with one or the other, but why do you think people believe this way and this way?
No. And
then they had respectful dialogue. And then at the end of it, I said, circle the side you agree with more. It's your opinion, So now when you leave here, if you feel strongly about this or this, you can argue for it and go, well, it's because of A, B, and C. Not just saying, well, I agree with this because it's cool. Or I don't like that person because they're an idiot. I'm that just sounds so stupid. You know, you got to be. It's just like writing formulating a thesis. And you know, you're writing an English essay, like, yeah, I think the Beatles are the most impactful group of all time. Well, tell me why. Well, they're cool.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that sounds so uneducated. You know, and so I think in what you and I do well, and I'll toot our horns. It's like you may completely disagree with me on the vote by mail and vice versa.
I do.
But you don't
But
call me a name, or I don't call you a name. And I think where we've gotten in this country, and it makes me upset, is, and I'm glad we're talking about this, it makes me upset as I look at it and I go, if someone really doesn't like liberal views, or they really don't like conservative views, in my opinion, if someone says, well, this is a crazy conservative, or this person's a woke liberal, I'm like, does the labeling really help? I don't think it does.
No, we
use it too much.
We talked about talking about this today, so let's before we go, let's do that, because I think one thing I'd like everybody out there to get is what Wes just said was, I think we've kind of lived that. I would be shocked if we ever stepped outside of our an agreement that we've had for a long time. Is like we can talk about anything, and it's like, man, tomorrow's just going to still happen, and we're going to still be really good friends. And it's like not having to have that worry that you're not going to like me because I do like Trump, or I'm not going to like you because you like Biden. That's not going to happen.
Sure.
So, I mean, I'm 100% secure with that. It's just like with you and Lou and me and Judy, you know, and then we also have other, super close friends where you just know their money, they got your back no matter what. And it doesn't matter. What we try to say on Stand Tall, Wes, is I think this is where you and I are at, is like, you've said this a lot in your how you teach. It's like, be an American before you're a Republican or a Democrat. And what's that mean? Well, it's like, before you just jump on board with, being a Republican or a Democrat, I try to get people to think like an American. Because I think, honestly, if we could move our country more towards the middle, that, if you took your 20% on the far left, 20% on the far right, and you start getting into that 35 to 65 range, it's probably filled with a lot more moderate Americans.
Well, I think a lot of the
they're going to be more apt to maybe have sit down and have a discussion and not get bad. They might be more apt to be able to come up with a solution on something and say, you know what, I'm a Republican, and I know this is going to sound like a Democratic vote, but it's the best plan today. Let's go with that one, and then, but we don't walk out of there going, stupid, point fingers,
But we do it too much now. I mean, things have become so divided that even people that are very smart and educated use those terms loosely.
Very
like
loosely.
Woke liberal, crazy conservative. But it's like, what's the point? It sounds so childish to me. And it's not like I want to live in this fantasy land where everyone's, life's tough. But like you say, put your American hat on, your values first. In my mind, I look at that too, and I'm like, how about just be a good human first? And like, what I miss, and we were really lucky in the state that we had for 10, 15 years, everyone thinks Oregon's really blue. Outside of a couple big cities, it's really not blue. I mean, it's just a couple population centers that make it blue in terms of election outcome. But for 10, 15 years, we had in this state the same people who elected a liberal attorney in Ron Wyden as one senator, and a Mormon conservative businessman in Gordon Smith. Where else do we see that in America? And why did they vote for both those who have very different views for 10, 15 years? And they had a pretty nasty campaign against each other. Remember that back in the 90s? So you have two people that have a very different view, belief system, background, who both had the best interest for our state at heart every time. And, Wyden pissed off some of the Democrats based on his votes, and Smith did the same for the Republicans. But I don't know if we're ever going to see that again, where two people with very different views can be elected by the same voting electorate in a state. And it was a great example of bipartisanship. And they were, I think at the same time, you look at like Biden and John McCain. Very different views. Good friends who respected each other but disagreed. Like, we need more of that.
No, I think the bottom line, Wes, I think the respect factor before we get into, like voting by mail, I don't agree with it and you do, but
Sure.
I mean, that's just an issue. That respect factor of going back, like I'd have people say, about Biden and I'd go, not a big fan. I don't like his policies, but I said, if I was given the opportunity to meet him, he's my president.
Yes.
And I would sit back and go, it's very nice to meet you, Mr. President.
Sure.
And if he said, did you vote for me? And I'd be honest, I'd say, no, I didn't, sir. I'd call him sir. And I think that same thing, like right now, if you just flipped off that switch, people call it like Trump derangement syndrome, Biden derangement syndrome, whatever.
Sure.
If we just flip that switch off, like you do in
Yeah.
your fuse box, and you said, okay, we don't have lights on the patio for a week. Okay, we don't have lights. You got to go out there with a flashlight, whatever. If we flipped that switch off and just got back to being, I'm going to honor the chief of police. I'm going to honor my
Sure.
teacher. I'm going to honor my boss at McDonald's, even though they're not my favorite person, but they're my boss. I'm going to honor
Sure.
them. I'm going to honor the president. I'm going to honor the governor. I'm going to honor. And I think that's what I talk about when I get back to being a really strong, healthy country. Is we have to get back to that point where we just don't throw people away. Because, like you said, before you're an American, you're a human being.
Yes.
When Judy went to Africa, I got lots of pictures. Some of them, nope, not down there. She was over there for a medical mission trip.
Yeah.
And we're talking Uganda. We're talking out in the sticks. We're talking. Judy, when she came home, she left everything she had there except the clothes she was wearing.
Yeah.
Just to make sure that the socks. She said,
life was improved for the people she was serving.
People's
Yes.
life. And she came back. She said there's many times she had to walk over behind a bush and just cry.
Yeah.
Because we're talking about socks.
Yes.
Stuff that we are so spoiled in America, England, all these, Italy, these developed countries. And these people are like, socks make their life
Yes.
better for a while.
Yeah.
And I think, I know I've been, when you run for political office and you're there and stuff, yeah, you are open to criticism.
Of course.
But it sure would have been nice if the people who would call me a racist would have came up and said, hey, Dave, I got to talk to you about something. How do you feel about this?
Sure.
How do you feel about George Floyd? And what I would have said about George Floyd, I'd say, well, it's very sad what happened to George Floyd.
Sure.
I do think that the police officers and those guys could have done a much better job. And if that leads to any police training and stuff
Reform.
like that,
Yep.
there can be some good coming out of something bad. I said, but I tell him the same thing. I said he was high, intoxicated, he was on drugs, and he was a criminal. And so this was not we're not talking about a Nelson Mandela here. We're talking about somebody who had a pretty colorful record. But at the same time, how do we come out of this thing? How do you look at George Floyd? You don't like him because he was black. I don't care at all that he was black. This would have been, if he was brown, black, or white, it wouldn't matter to me. I just think how we are judged, how we judge other people. Sometimes, we can just judge somebody and say, Hart's better than Pat Benatar.
I agree.
That's your opinion. Yes, I would agree too. Pat Benatar was pretty good though. But
she was great, but I like Hart better.
When you get into like, opinions and stuff like that, but when you really get into like calling people like out in our country right now, how disrespectful we are to other humans. To me, I'd like to see that really ratcheted back. And I'm like, if you don't like Teslas, I drove into Bend the other day to see my family. And there's probably 50 people more my age out there protesting against Tesla. So they're mad at Elon Musk. Okay. It's our country's right. First Amendment, go protest. I'm like, no problem. Okay. Now, when you take that to the point that you're going to go in there and destroy a $100,000 car,
that's breaking the law.
Now you're breaking the law.
Sure.
And so I'd like to see those people protesting and say, hey, don't go burn up the Tesla and do that. But protest is fine. I don't
Sure.
mind protests at all. Like I drove by Providence Hospital out here.
Yeah,
They
with the
protested
strike.
for like a month.
Yeah, I honked in support every time.
Yeah. And,
Yes, they're some of the most underappreciated workers
but
in the world, in my opinion.
but they weren't out. I didn't see any really derogatory signs. I didn't
No,
see
they were peaceful protests.
I didn't see a manager hung an FAQ out there, with one of their
I
protesters.
hear you.
None of that stuff happened. They were just protesting for their jobs. I talked to a couple of people that didn't because they couldn't financially.
Well, sure,
They
that's
didn't support the
yes.
picket line.
Yeah.
And I said, "How have you been treated post that?" And he said, "Pretty well. There's a couple people, but time will tell." That's what other people said.
For sure.
Time will tell.
Yeah. Well, we almost went on strike my last year.
And that.
Yeah, I mean, but I think back to your comment, like, we got to get to the point where we can agree to disagree, and we've got civil discourse. This is why we're doing this.
Yeah.
I completely understand. Well, I should rephrase that. I can see why people are pissed off. You're talking about George Floyd, some of these other incidents. I can never put myself in the place of someone of a different skin color or background because I haven't had that experience. And people are rightfully justified to be pissed about stuff. Like if they're pissed about decisions with you guys and the board, rightfully so, they should be able to protest, have a civil conversation. I think the hardest part about that whole era, and still exists, whether it's a school board issue, whether it's a national issue, the COVID era has been a very emotional tinderbox.
True.
There's so much going on, right? And so it's hard, I think, for folks, and they're justified in being pissed. Like they're justified in being pissed. It's hard to take your emotions out of it when you're angry or unsupporting of something and to have a dialogue. It takes a lot. I mean, there are certain issues, things people have done where it's taken me a long time to just like, okay, I'm going to try to, I'm a pretty calm human, but I'm going to try to take some time to settle down before I can have that conversation instead of just, spouting out my angst. But it's hard. I mean, I understand why people say they're angst because they're pissed off. It takes a lot of self-control to get to the point to be able to have this discourse. Even if I've had very spirited conversations with friends on the other side of the aisle, but I enjoy them more than me being with folks on my side of the aisle complaining about the same stuff over and over. I'm like, oh my God, that's so boring.
Yeah.
I'd rather have civil discourse.
Well, one of the big things we've talked about, that's why we put at Canby, was boys playing girls sports. And I was dealing with directly at Canby, and it's just like, I've had people on the show, but after our video went like 15 million hits worldwide, we had a lot of moms call us, and we had a lot of grandparents call us, and we had a lot of, moms and their daughters call from all over the world, and they were talking to us, and we're just like, holy smokes.
Yep.
We're talking about, I had a guy the other day on one of my reels, I was talking about this.
Okay.
And he said, well, really, is it really all that bad? What are these girls really going through? Has anybody ever actually gotten hurt? And I don't ever do this. I usually don't respond to people who make comments. I mean, it's their comment. Fine. I don't care, good or bad. Some people are very eloquent in their responses to not my post necessarily, but I'll read other people's posts about other stuff.
Yep.
And I'm like, wow, that's pretty well thought of. I learn a lot. And the other day I posted something on a basketball game. It was the end of an NCAA game, first round, I think. And
like a buzzer beater shot or something?
Yeah. Who beat somebody? Colorado State lost to And
it was when Maryland hit the buzzer beater.
Yeah. And so the guy took
off to the left steps. Hit the.
And I remember we were on the patio. We were at the beach.
Yeah.
And I just was so excited about this game. And I really wanted Colorado State to win.
Sure.
But all of a sudden I'm like, oh yeah, dude, you shoot this video. So we shoot like a 10 times, and this happened, and the shot goes in, and that's all I did. And some of the comments coming back were, yeah, it was a great game, but then other people said, and I got a little animated. I'm on the patio looking at the ocean, but I got a couple comments that were negative saying, yeah, but he took 3.5 steps. Colorado State should have won.
Well,
and I'm
sure
like,
they should
so
have.
I went back and I saw some highlights. I'm like, dang, he really did. But I'm not the referee. They didn't call it. That's how the game ends up. Yep. But these people made comments. They were really mad at me. But they said he did do a massive travel. And so I'm like, when you look at that when we do videos and stuff like that, people's responses, you know, we're living in a new era. I tell
Sure.
people all the time, they go, "You're on TikTok?" And I'm like, "Yeah."
Yeah.
And I said, "You on
Next one of us.
Instagram, X?" I go, "Yeah." And I go, "Well,
Yeah.
there's good and bad. You just have to, like everything, you have to
Sure.
pick and choose what you want. But there's some really cool stories on there. If you're scrolling through, it's pretty simple,
Yep.
pretty fast. But I guess my point is um,
Tyler Selke.
I'd like to see people. That would be my phone again.
It's a good ringtone.
I'd like to see people just be a lot more careful before they, like, I don't care what you
Think
call
before
me.
you speak.
Be careful before before they just say, Dave Brown, you're a racist, homophobic, mother effing, blah, blah,
Oh,
blah.
sure.
And I'd like to say, well, now what I do in public, if I have somebody say that, I will walk up to them and go, no, calmly. And they'll look at me and they'll study something else emotionally. And because
Sure.
you're going to get emotion, then you're going to get emotion, then anger.
Yeah.
And then you're going to get, and so I just say, they'll say something again. I go, nope, that's not true. That is definitely not true. And then I'll go, if you want to know the truth, I'll tell you the truth.
Yeah.
And they'll go, fine, tell me what the truth is. And
Yeah.
so I'll just say this, and they're going, well, I didn't know that.
Well, yeah, the misinformed.
So it's
Sure.
like, do we really know what the four Beatles were really, 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 really like, and why they really, really, really broke up? We can guess and assume,
Sure.
and we could say stuff, but we don't know that there was a conversation over money,
Sure.
a girlfriend situation, a family situation. Somebody
Mhm.
could have said something bad about Yoko Ono in 1967 that
I
John.
think a lot of people said some bad stuff about Yoko Ono back in the day when the Beatles broke up, but that's for a different.
But you don't think that was the main reason?
I'll plead the fifth on that one.
Okay.
No, but I think for the main reason we wanted to do this was to encourage people listening to do what we do, and I think it helps that we've been friends for a long time and we've been able to do this, but for people that are struggling to have conversations with their friends.
So why can we do it?
But I think because, I was going to say, first of all, for people that struggle to do what we're doing, even with family members, because I see it a lot in families. I understand why you want to get in the room with your uncle and call him a mother, because you've been pissed off at him for this viewpoint that you find discriminatory or whatever. If you can't have a conversation, you can't. But I think when it comes to a lower tension level, like difference of opinion on mail-in voting or something like that, try to have the conversation and don't interrupt. Let the person share their views and then you share yours.
No.
And you may learn some things. That's why I had those kids do that exercise. It wasn't easy for kids who really felt strongly one way about, voting rights or abortion rights. Or the biggest one I remember was kneeling during the anthem. That was a huge topic.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of kids who love sports and they watch the NFL. And there were some kids that really struggled, that were so against kneeling during the anthem, to come up with stuff on the other side. And I said, you don't have to believe it, but try to think about why this person did this and why this person believes this, because it makes you more well-rounded in your argumentation for what you believe and what you believe in. So I think for you and I think the fact that we have a mutual respect and we know each other and our character as humans and what's in our heart, that helps. But not everyone has that.
How do you, Wes, though? I mean, for a younger guy than myself by quite a bit, you are, you have great parents, by the way.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's a big part of it.
And you've kind of followed in their footsteps, as far as
education and
probably a little politically.
Yeah, but again, I think everyone has their own views. We disagree on certain issues.
I would just, going back, I'm picturing 16 to 22-year-old West Gaverson High School, college, sitting down at the table. You're an only child.
Yep.
I'll think your parents just talked your socks off at the dinner table about politics and
not that much,
and about music and about sports.
It was always a dialogue. They didn't really say you need to believe this.
No, I'm not saying that, but they talk to you a lot.
Yeah,
they're good communicators.
Yeah,
they're educators and they're nice people.
Yeah.
But I think, it's impressive though for your age and
My
in
age.
today's world
Yeah.
is, and I felt that the first time I met you though is I knew you were talented. I knew you knew your stuff.
Maybe
you
on a
didn't have
couple
to
things.
tell me. You just showed me through your actions.
Well,
And
but why would I need to tell you?
because a lot of people have to tell everybody how good they are and how smart they are, and they have to tell everybody what to think. I hate Trump. I hate Biden. Da 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 da. I think instead of telling everybody, build a relationship and show through your actions, and then let that respect factor come into play. like we have to encourage anybody. It's more fun to be friends with somebody than enemies.
Sure.
And like we talked about Jim Solberg. Jim, I hope you're listening. Jim and I kind of butted heads as coaches.
Take the kind of out. You did.
He was a little
You
older
did.
than I was.
You butted heads. You didn't kind of butt heads. You butted heads.
Okay, bam. But you know what? From the first time I met Jim, I'm
You
like,
respected him
dang,
as a
this guy's
tennis coach. Yes.
These kids know how to play.
Yep.
I could tell when he talked to a kid and there's a changeover that they're going to make an adjustment. So I had to be right there with them making adjustments because that's a game of sports. It's tennis. And I think that's the whole thing with you have to just don't just judge people.
Sure.
Get to know them. And,
Yep.
and like you said, if you totally disagree or you don't have the same viewpoint on abortion, go, okay, know the issue so you can talk more about it. But at the end of the day, it's sure a lot more fun to know that we can talk like that one day.
Sure.
About, I said, well, before we talk about abortion, let's talk about choice and not getting pregnant. And you said, all right. So we were 14 holes into that conversation before we got to abortion.
We started driving to the left and the right.
Well, he's a lot better golfer than I am. So
no, but I think the hard thing is people have very visceral reactions to things that hit home, and again, I don't know the experience of someone who grew up in a different country or a different religious community or ethnic community. And I want to learn why people think the way they do.
Sure.
And so I think the more we can sit in a room, but if you can't sit in the room with someone that really pisses you off, it's probably not going to be productive to do it. I'm thinking at more of a surface, lower tension level.
No.
We can sit and do this, do you mind if I ask you kind of as a last thing, can we do an exercise? And is going to be
Teacher West.
This is going to be fun. And I'll ask you to repeat for me as well. I'm going to look at your lifetime.
Okay.
So you were born what year?
57.
Okay. So in 57, you had Eisenhower was the president.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
So throughout history, and you're a smart man, you know your stuff with presidents and stuff, and I'll ask you to do the same for me. If we can go down the line, starting with Eisenhower all the way up to Mr. Trump, fantastic. If we can go all the way up, if I say a president, can you say one positive thing about that person, even if you disagree with their politics?
Sure.
Okay, you ready? Eisenhower. One first positive thing that pops into your mind.
I think he was very capable of leading a military, and he had his leadership capabilities at the highest level. The 30,000 foot view was amazing.
Yep.
Kennedy's one of the more fascinating figures to me, probably up to Trump, because he had the ability to capture the imagination of a country. And I think his inspiration was unparalleled. Different time. He would be a very moderate, maybe even almost, some of his
probably moderate, yeah.
Republican now, but he had the ability to inspire people, and some people could say it was his youth or whatever, but
Mm-hmm.
I think he wasn't perfect at all. We know that about any president, but he did see some things really well. It would have been really fun to see him get 2 terms in, and how the world would have been different.
Sure. How about Lyndon Johnson?
I'm just different. You're going to be surprised on this one. I've been to the LBJ Ranch.
Yep.
And I've toured it. I've done a lot of research, and I think he was a smart, tough Texan.
Mm-hmm.
I think he was crazier than a loon, and I don't like a lot of the parts about his personality. But the one thing I found fascinating about him reading his book, I read his book,
mm-hmm.
that when he got to Washington D.C. in the 30s as a young congressman,
Mm-hmm.
he went and knocked on every single door in Washington, D.C., whether they're Republican, Democrat, coat hanger, secretary.
Yep.
He met everybody.
He was good with people.
He got to everybody and built relationships up.
Yep.
As a 35-year-old.
Yeah.
So by the time
he got into the office.
Now, did things change him? Sure.
Of course. I mean, he also.
If you get a chance to go to Stonewall, Texas, or something like that, look up the LBJ Ranch. It's a 1,600 acre cattle ranch today. They donated it all to the National State of Texas and Parks.
Sure.
But it's fascinating to go in there. You got a bank of phones, 4 on the side, 4 on that side. And you pick up the phone, and he was the first president to have a conversation taped. So you're sitting there with Lyndon Johnson talking to Martin Luther King, to Nita Khrushchev, to Richard Nixon, and to Franklin Graham, Billy Graham.
Billy Graham.
And so you're listening like this 2-minute conversation. The last one, though, the person he probably hated the most in this whole world, who was it?
I think a lot of people didn't like him, but I don't know.
Bobby Kennedy.
Oh, gotcha. That makes sense.
Fascinating conversation.
Yeah. Oh, I bet.
This was on the civil rights issue.
Yep, I bet. The next president, I went to this library in Yorba Linda, Mr. Nixon.
Yeah, I think complex. I campaigned for him at 68 at the age of 11. Nixon's won. Humphrey's a bum. Here comes Wallace tagging along. We thought that got him elected. I think he took over the presidency in an incredibly difficult time.
Sure.
And I think things. It's unfortunate how his whole thing ended, but he barely lost the race to Nixon or to Kennedy in 1960.
Yep.
Barely, like 110,000 votes.
And they found that there was an issue with some voter stuff. And they could have gone back. I think it was in Chicago. They could have gone back, and Nixon said, "The country's too important. We need to move forward. I'm not going to contest this."
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay.
How about? So who would be next then? It would be Ford.
Yeah, I think overall,
good football player.
I'm not impressed.
But you got to say one positive thing.
I think he loved his family.
Okay.
I think he, again, he had to take over a very difficult situation. I think he knew when he probably took it over, he wouldn't get elected.
Okay.
And, good for him for putting the country first.
Okay.
That way. So I would say that I think he probably loved our country, and he did put the country first, knowing that came out of the disastrous ending to the Nixon presidency that he would not get elected.
Sure. How about Jimmy Carter?
The only time I ever voted Democrat my whole life.
Okay.
I was younger, voted for Jimmy Carter because I just liked his character, which proved to be true throughout his life. He's a quality human being. A lot of his policies were, they have proved to not, be too good if you're a conservative. So,
Ronald Reagan. You can only pick one.
I'm a big Reagan fan. I think what I liked about Reagan was he was a person that we needed at the time to come in to deal with the Soviet Union, to deal with a lot of issues that came up throughout the 70s.
Okay.
Because we're talking post-Vietnam, our world's a different place, and the money issues and things like that. I think Reagan. I think he won by the biggest landslide in history in '84
over Mondale.
Yep. So I think he was obviously the best storyteller that's ever been in the White House. He could spin a story like no other. He was a professional actor.
Yep.
But I think he, for me, he brought a lot of tough wisdom when we needed it at the time. Mm-hmm. And I think he made some, good decisions. I think presidents of every era have had to make decisions that were really not going to make them a more popular person. For sure. And we'll never know most of those reasons why they had to make those decisions.
I'm just letting you know that when we turn this around and you do it to me, I'm going to make mine quick. So, no, these are all good. But I think it's not easy sometimes to look at someone that you disagree with and say something nice.
No.
What about George H.W. Bush?
I wasn't a big fan. I don't know.
But one positive.
I think he was a decorated Navy pilot, and I think he really loved his country, and served our country the best he thought. And he made the mistake of saying, reading my lips on the taxes.
Okay.
And that cost him.
How about the person you say is my boy, Bill Clinton?
I think Bill balanced the budget, and I'll forever stick up for him on that one. And yeah, there you go.
How about W? Besides his grasp of the English language.
He owned the Texas Rangers, and he liked baseball.
Okay.
However, all that went down, I thought his calmness during the 9/11 attacks was pretty darn impressive.
Yeah.
I thought he did a good job through 9/11, so that's my number one there.
Barack Obama?
I think Barack really engaged a lot of people who hadn't been engaged in politics in a long time, and he had the ability to speak. I'm not a fan, but I am a fan of the fact that I would love to have met him.
Mm-hmm.
I think he understood how to. Probably him and Reagan are the two best to communicate with both sides.
Maybe Clinton you throw in there too. With the budgeting part, he had to.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay.
But I thought that was Obama's best thing.
Okay. Trump? We only get to say one thing about Trump. I know he's in there twice.
I think Trump is, to me, he is the answer to a lot of bad policies, and it's impossible to take on so much. And what they've thrown at him with the lawfare, what they've thrown at him with everything, it's shown how bad our country can be. And I think he's handled it all, including assassination attempts. Really, I think he's handled it. And I know people have been in his presence many, 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 many times. They're good friends of mine, and he treats people really well. And I think probably like Obama, he's pretty misunderstood.
And the last one for you before we flip it real quick. Biden.
I think Joe is. I think when he was a younger man and he was a congressman or senator or whatever, I think that's when he was at his best. He was a good speaker. I think he was able to. I don't like 50-year career politicians, and he's the epitome of that. But I think he was. That was the height of his career when he was at his best. It's too bad that he couldn't have been president when he was like 50.
He tried a few times.
And stuff. So I would just say, at one point, not when he was president, he was a moderate contributor to the Congress and stuff like that. And I think he was there a lot of times. Maybe he was liberal, but he was there for the right reasons.
Sure. We do a quick flip around, and then we'll.
Eisenhower.
So you got to start with my lifetime. Eisenhower wasn't alive.
Okay.
Reagan. We're starting with Reagan.
Oh,
no, that's what I went chronological.
Funny.
Not Eisenhower. I mean, I could tell you, but I'm thinking my lifetime.
It's like kids in the music. They go, Coach, I wouldn't.
No, I hear you.
70s.
No, Reagan was the first one.
Okay, Reagan.
So I was born in '86, which was that when Josh was same year. Your son Josh, yeah. I think Reagan was a fantastic communicator and had a great sense of humor.
Okay.
That's it. I'm making it short and sweet.
No.
For everyone.
George W.
George HW. I don't think we've ever had a president come in with as solid of a resume, working his way through governmental service. When you look at military experience, when you look at obviously Congress, you look at CIA, you look at all that stuff. And I think he had a healthy respect from both sides of the aisle.
Okay.
Yeah.
Clinton.
I think Clinton had a he kind of did what Carter did a little bit, because he wasn't really on the national radar really until he ran for office. So I think those two guys, both being from the South, but kind of showed you that if you're the person from the small town who doesn't come from a lot, you can achieve great things. I think he inspired a lot more people of both parties than people realize, based on, I want to say, rags to riches story, but obviously, and additionally to that, very smart human. Okay. I think he was a Rhodes Scholar. Yeah, very smart.
George W.
Besides throwing out the best first pitch in the history of presidents, throwing that 9/11 video of him throwing the pitch in Yankee Stadium gives me chills every time. I think he did a good job of handling initially 9/11, and just the fallout from that. I think that was the highest presidential approval rating we've ever seen. It was like 92%. But I also think what was good about him is he found a way, like more than any president I can ever think of, he was able to laugh at himself and like roll with it because he said a lot of stupid stuff, and he would say it too. You know, like he wasn't the most adept at communicating, but he laughed at himself and just rolled with the punches instead of being super uptight.
Good.
Who's next?
President Obama.
I think probably one of the most inspirational presidents again, and like I said, with the teaching piece for me, inspired more people to become involved regardless of what party. And I think it's a massive, I mean, he broke a lot of barriers, of course, but I think just inspirational to younger people to get involved in politics. I was one of them.
President Biden.
I think I respect Biden for a lifetime of service, whether it's, I know you say you don't like the 50-year politician, but you know, the guy's a fighter. He had a lot of rough stuff happen to him in his life with family members dying and, you know, and I respect his service.
Yeah.
Immensely.
Yeah.
And then last but not least,
President Trump, baby.
I think he probably is the most street smart and media savvy president we've ever had. Like, whether you agree or disagree with the policy, I think the guy has found a way to get his brand and his image to a point that has inspired people to follow him.
Well, I appreciate that's a great question. I like that line of thinking because I think, you know, with staying positive here, I think, you know, if there's anything, Wes, moving forward when we do more podcasts, it's like we have been really not contentious, me, but
no, we've had some arguments.
We've had to lead our teams through, you know, tough situations on the court where you saw it one way, I saw it another way, you know, and competition is going to bring that out.
Yep.
But I think, you know, moving forward, if there's anything we can do for people out there, you know, to get you, and it's one thing we want to do is stand tall all the time. It's like, man, sit down with people that have that opposite point of view.
Yes.
And I think the other thing, what I've sensed in politics since I've been at like 5.5 years, is that this is a big lack of knowledge about what's really going on.
Sure.
You know, take some time, you know, figure stuff out. You know, hopefully you've had, I'm really happy for those kids that had you for a teacher. I know we've had kids come up to me and Judy all the time, and they've had Judy, and they're just like, oh my gosh, favorite teacher of all time. Yeah. I think you would be in that category too. And I think that, you know, for us at Stand Tall, you know, we want to get back to that point where we're not just talking about Republicans and Democrats as much as we're talking about what's a solution to this deal. Like, you know, if we go back to even, you know, vote by mail, you know, is it the best? Is it not the best? Is it this? Is there a better way to take vote by mail, tweak it to a certain point where we can make it to where both sides of the aisle could agree that this is the right voting system we can have. And that's when we'll come up with real solutions for our country like we have in the past in the United States of America. Ending this on a funny note, though, today, have you seen online the guy from Saturday Night Live who plays George Washington?
No.
You haven't seen a comedian? Mm-hmm. You guys have got to watch this guy. Just go to YouTube, go to Instagram, but go on YouTube. He's definitely there. He's probably about your age, 40s, 35. What are you, 20? He has a little bit of a beard.
Knocking on 40.
Brownish hair. And he plays George Washington. He's in the boat with the, you know, these key guys. And they just do this Saturday Night Live comedy. Get totally clean. Your kids can watch it. And then they'll say, you know, one of his things was, well, as free men, you know, we're going to change the names of some things here in America. Yeah. And one of them, he says, just goes, for example, the number 12. We're going to call it a dozen. And one of the men goes, well, sir, why would we call it a dozen? He goes, because it is. And then he just moves on to the next question. And he rolls through it. But you got, you know, it's on Saturday Night Live. They got this little boat, and there's like 8 or 9 of these videos. And they play it for Lude. I'm telling you what, it is hilarious. He talks about all these different questions and brings up, you know, silly stuff like, you know, we're going to, he talks about food. We're going to call food different names.
Sure.
And somebody, he goes like meat. And he goes, what kind of meat, sir? He goes, chicken wings. Chicken wings will however be known as buffalo wings.
Oh, buffalo wings.
He goes, they'll be called chicken wings.
Sure.
Why, sir, would we call them chicken wings when they're buffalo? He goes, it's the way it is. And then he moves on to, like hamburger. Ham made out of ham, sir? No, made out of beef. But you have to watch. I'm not doing it justice, but watch that one. I think it stands tall, you guys. I really appreciate having Wes here. It's always fun to be with a friend. I mean, we haven't spent this much time together unless we're golfing.
Yeah,
And,
we're talking about these topics for as long as we have. This has been great.
We're pretty tame today. We kept it G-rated.
Yeah, we had some. There's some visible disagreements, but that's the whole point.
That's the whole point.
Like you can, as rough as it is to do this for some people, like try it, give it a shot. And I always encourage people, when you get your news sources, that's a whole other topic.
Yeah, it is.
Like, watch all of it.
Oh.
Like, how often do you see people go, I won't watch CNN or I won't watch Fox? I'm like, I watch all of them. I want to hear what every network has to say. I watch BBC. I watch Al Jazeera. I watch the international ones. Because, again, that's another topic on the what is news and what's reputable. But it's like, I've always found in the early part of the day when you have your news broadcast, 99% of it's the same thing on all those networks. Once you get into the talk shows, that's where stuff gets a little different. And is that really news?
Yeah.
I would argue it's not. I'd say it's a variety show, but that's maybe for a different topic, different day.
But a show that's on an early morning is taking a lot of flack right now. The View, Joey Baker.
Yeah, that's a variety show though. That's not a news show.
So
in my opinion,
they're taking a lot of heat right now.
Why?
Because people just
a lot of people watch it and like it.
Joy and Whoopi kind of are taking some flack right now. They're taking some
just like the folks probably at Fox are taking flack from the left.
Yeah.
And certain shows. That's what I'm saying. Like in my mind, that's not a news show. So if people, that's a different. No, if the whole fake news concept thing is interesting because in my mind, like I think a lot of that was born from those variety-based shows. I'm like, that's not news. That's in my mind what The View is not a news information show. It's an opinion show.
Yeah.
Just like Rachel Maddow, that's an opinion show. Gutfield or The Five, that's an opinion show. Is that a news show? I don't think it is. But if it's anyways, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like those, and so in my mind, if you take away those shows and you have like your nightly news broadcasts, what you see on Fox and CNN and MSNBC, really not that different. It's the variety shows that are different. That's my argument.
Yeah.
We're more alike than we are apart when it comes to what we
so a challenge
see happening.
To all the listeners out there.
That's what I'm saying. Watch them all.
Could be this is like if you're having a hard time with somebody and you just if you're at work or a family member at Thanksgiving or like you said, I'd say I tell my kids this all the time. Before you go to bed, you brush your teeth, look in the mirror and go, what role am I playing in this? How could I do better with this person? And if you can't do better, if you just want to punch their lights out, then it's time to take a break from that situation.
Agreed.
And go to the beach.
Agreed.
Go skiing. Go do something and stay out of that situation until you can be calm.
Yep.
Because I think one of the things we stay calm with each other, but the problem seems to be a lot of people, they get fired up and get mad.
Sure.
And that's just not going to work. Anger is never going to convince the other person to come to your side of the table. And it also is really stressful on you. I would highly recommend to people that are struggling, listen to more music.
Sure.
Find more joy in your life. What makes you joyful? What's fun to you?
Sure.
Go do that for a while. Pickleball is now turned into a job for you.
Sure.
But
we still talked about it for an hour, but
but you still can, like this morning, I think you got to play a little bit. You're probably like, I can just play today. I don't have to think and coach.
Yeah.
Big difference.
Played for 3 hours. It was great.
So that's back when pickleball is not just train, coach.
Sure.
But get yourself out of those stressful situations until you can be calm.
Yeah.
And they're just understand that there's going to be certain people that And I'm going to go Bible-y on it a little bit. I know it's not something that we're going to talk about, but
Sure.
Pray about it. Pray about how you're going to react in situations. And if you're really having a hard time with, President Trump or President Biden or anybody else in a situation, pray for that person. Pray for our country. And I, again, going back to being American, think about how blessed we are to live in this country, that we made money, not a lot of it, coaching tennis ball. And that's how we met, and so many people in this world have a lot rougher life than that.
Oh yeah. We're lucky. We've got good lives.
The food we had for lunch today.
Oh, I got him to New Burgundian Bistro, and I never thought I'd get him there. And
big deal.
Yeah, you had some food. It was breakfast, but you had something on the menu. Usually the places I suggest, you're like.
So we didn't talk about this, but it's very end on food. Wes, what's your main gist of how you eat?
So mostly vegetarian, but I also like semi-pescatarian. I eat some fish and some seafood and shrimp and clams, and I almost got the was it the clams or the mussel was the special of the day. I was like, oh, that's actually.
You were thinking about it?
Oh yeah.
Really?
Yeah, but I had my mindset on that hummus wrap.
What?
But
hummus wrap was like huge. He got that
a lot of vegetables.
How much was that?
Like how big or
no? How much that cost?
I don't know.
That's huge.
$15.
The lettuce salad around it. That was a good deal.
Yeah, it was good.
I thought the price was fair. There.
Very healthy.
New Dundee, we had a great waitress, and I actually got bacon. I wasn't really hungry, and I got a toast, and I had raspberry jam.
Yep.
It's a little more upscale, but Newburgh
really
Dundee in Newburgh, Oregon.
Yep.
I think food wise, I'm picky, but I told you I'm 10 days in, and you've complimented me twice a day. Trust me, I take this. I've lost 6 pounds in 10 days, and I'm a sugarholic. I go through therapy. I go to treatments. I have a coin and everything. It's really been kind of eye-opening. I want to know what it's like at the end of March, and then I want to know what it's like at the end of April after about 43 days.
Yeah.
How I really feel, how I feel, not how you feel.
Yeah.
Because I do like meat. But I tell you right now, if I had to choose, I go fish, seafood, chicken, then beef.
Yeah.
Except my brother-in-law Keith's hamburger. He raised grass-fed beef.
Well, that's
it just
different.
melts in your mouth.
I might eat a burger if it's from there.
It is.
Yeah.
So good. Steaks have been dropping on my list a little bit.
I don't like
my wife eats a lot of salad. She's a third-ranked salad eater in the world. You didn't know that, did you?
According to what?
Dave Brown.
Okay.
She eats big salads.
Who's 2 and 1?
Huh? They got to be out there somewhere.
Okay.
And so she weighs all of like 122 pounds, and she eats big salads.
Huge.
Big, huge salads. I'm liking this thing though. I'm feeling better. I feel more energetic.
Good.
I'm trying. My next goal moving out, I try to take away sugar in my coffee. That hasn't been too bad.
Good.
I put a little cream in there.
It's healthier for you.
And then no cookies, no candy, no soda pop, no chips. I'm just trying to stay away from those easy, straight up, crazy sugar things. A little bag of Cheetos the other day. Stopped at the grocery store. I'm going to grab those, drive home from the beach. 450 calories.
Sure.
I'm trying to stay about 1,000 to 1,200 calories every day, and I'm working out.
1,000 calories a day?
Yeah.
How you feeling with that?
I
would say 2,000 is probably good.
I get a little hunger in the evening.
1,800
than you though.
Yeah, but I think 1,800 is probably, for how active you are, 1,800 to 1,400 is probably healthier. 18. Like mine's 2,000, but that's.
But if they're good calories.
Well, yeah.
But the Cheetos the other day, you take 450 calories, you're going. You could eat 4 bags of that and get to 1,800 calories, and those are bad calories.
I hear you.
So I'm just trying to get to there, and then I really want to have that experience at the end of April.
Yeah. How you feeling?
Like
Feeling
how
good?
I'm really feeling. Because you hear all these people on the internet going, "Oh yeah, do this, do the carnivore diet, do this, do this," and I'm like, yeah, I hear all kinds of different stories. You got that one really good-looking guy on the social medias. You go, yeah, you can eat all this stuff you want, and he's eating this and eating that, and I'm like, I'm starting to kind of. I'm tightening it down a little bit. I definitely want to lose some pounds, but at the same time, tone up. At the same time, I just want to feel better.
Yep. I guess the last thing I'll say, I'm proud of you for doing that, and not to do your impression again, but we did talk today about sports, politics, people, education, and you threw in a little Jesus.
Got a little Jesus, a little Bible.
So there we go.
There we go. Nice job.
Thanks for having me. Maybe I'll be back.
Oh, you will be. We want to do we really do, call in on this stuff because we want all your feedback. Go to standtallwithdaveBrown.com and we can get in there, and we definitely want to do more stuff that you're interested in. We got so many guests coming up. There'll be a lot more podcasts happening, and there'll be more stuff on location. But we definitely want to do a pickleball series, and you're the guy.
Okay. We'll get Lanier in here, and we'll get some folks in.
We'll go out on my court in the backyard, and we'd like to show you why pickleball is awesome. And I think this is the guy to do it. So stand tall with Dave Brown. Peace out.
Thank you, sir. I got to get going.